Welcome everybody. We're going to call this meeting to order. It's 6:30, August 26, 2020. Tonight we're going to be dealing with an application for rezoning under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act. I'm going to begin this presentation here and go through an agenda for tonight's hearing. So this is an application by Little Bay Lobster Limited, public hearing objections. This is for regulation 20 Bay 00901 and 20 Bay 0092. As presented by me, Alex Henderson. I'm a registered professional planner in the province of New Brunswick, and I work for the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission. This hearing is held on behalf of the Minister of Environment and Local Government, and this hearing will become a transcript in which will be sent to the minister for review prior to decision being rendered on this application. So this is a review of tonight's hearing agenda. We're going to try to aim for 2 hours for this. I'm going to begin by presenting the background, the process, and the regulation. Then the main part is hearing from you, the public. And we have a bit of ground rules for this. We have a number of people on tonight. So we're going to ask that everybody keep their comments to 1 to 2 minutes to just be succinct with your points. And also I'd ask you not to be repetitious. So if someone makes a point that you agree with, you can certainly just say, I agree with Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so and or concur with those points, and move on to the new information. So we're looking for new information, concerns that may not have been raised already. Also, we're going to be talking about land use. So this is not necessarily a discussion about international trade policy, not a discussion about business plans. We're talking about land use, community planning. So I'm going to ask and chair this meeting. So if people start to go off topic, I'm going to ask you to refocus. And you could be muted if we get into things like personal attacks or so on like that. So just ask everybody to be respectful of the hearing process. Same goes for the applicant. We want the applicant to be brief in his or her remarks. They're going to get a chance at the end of the public portion to respond to any questions that arise of the application. So this is going to be a chance for people to share their points. Or ask their questions, and then we'll have a part at the end to answer questions as they pertain to the application. That would be directed to the applicant. I will be able to respond to questions related to the Community Planning Act, the regulations proposed, or the process. So with that, I'm going to go to the next part, which is the summary of the process. So we received an application for rezoning last year. The application was reviewed and analyzed by planning staff here at the commission. We put together the application package and provided that to the province. And the province reviewed it along with a number of departments of the province, which is summarized in the planning report, which was available online for review. So after they had reviewed the application and looked at it from a number of angles, from Department of Environment, Local Government, to natural resources, energy development, to Department of Transportation Infrastructure, all the regulations that would be affected by this were considered provincially. So the final package with the rezoning was sent to the province with the changes to the regulation of the terms and conditions based on the comments. The feedback that came out of that was incorporated. The Planning Review Adjustment Committee of the Service Commission had to review the file and provide its views to the minister. And now it's the public's chance to provide their views. The public hearing was advertised in accordance with the Act. So we can't advertise more than 30 days ahead of the meeting. That's just the law. We also can't advertise less than 21 days before the meeting. It's very defined how we do these advertisements. But we did go above and beyond with the notice that we mailed out to property owners within a kilometer radius. So a lot of people know about this meeting. And as I said, this meeting is being recorded, and the transcript of it and the recording of it is going to be sent to the minister for part of his or her decision. There's a 2-week deadline for the comments to be received into the record. So September 9th officially. However, a decision on this cannot be made until a new government's formed. Obviously, we're in the middle of an election cycle. So the new Minister of Environment, Local Government, when the new government's formed, whoever he or she may be, will have to make a decision, and that's within 6 months of today. So they have to make a decision to either approve or deny it by February 26, 2021. So the background, there was an active gravel pit in the location of the proposed rezoning on Sandy Point, and I believe it's somewhere in the realm of 70 years. That predates the Community Planning Act of 1973 and the Bayside Rural Plan Regulation. So it's a grandfathered use that can continue to operate without conditions. The proposal from the proponent to rezone the gravel pit area would just be for this gravel pit portion. The PID is quite large. It's an 87.5 hectare property, goes all the way back to Shamcook Lake, but it's only this 3.18 hectare portion that encompasses the gravel pit that would be proposed to be rezoned. So the rezoning would be from rural to light industrial to allow a seafood warehousing operation. Bayside's rural plan has no zone specifically for light industrial uses. It does have the port, which is for general industrial uses, including heavier industrial uses. There's an application to amend the Bayside plan, and it was filed with us, as I said, last year. The project proponent held a Q&A session with immediate residents, I think primarily on Donahue Drive, back in January 2020. I attended the meeting just as an observer. So since we received the application and we were looking at the various comments from the province and the planning analysis, we looked at potential terms and conditions for this type of rezoning. What would need to be put in place to protect the public interest? This was discussed with the applicant and the province. All right, Hollis, I think you're just visible there. There you go. There is significant opposition to this proposed rezoning. I'm going to summarize it here. There's concerns that this is a spot rezoning, and why wouldn't it just locate in the industrial park? I'm going to kind of talk to the point about spot rezoning in a moment. There's concerns about noise, odor, visual impact on nearby residents on Donahue Drive. There's concerns about proximity to the historic St. Croix Island and the International River. There's concerns about inappropriate consultation, and this meeting format tonight, online versus in person. There's significant concern the way this is being conducted. There's concerns about wildlife attraction impact on tourism businesses that are nearby. So just in summary, there is a lot at stake in the view of local people. And I think we'll hear that from everybody tonight and really get to some of the issues that are really probably most upsetting to people. This is the site that would be subject to the rezoning, the 3.18 hectares. So it's right near the river, but does not go right down to the river. So there's still the St. Croix corridor, and this development would not rezone that portion of the St. Croix corridor. This is a proposed site plan. So this has been available on the website as well. This showing the access and the orientation of the building, the location of intake, outtake pipelines, the location of the berms and the trees that would be required to be planted. And I'll talk about this site plan a little bit more later. Just a close-up view. As you can see, they're 30 meters from the river is what's required. Now, one of the points to talk about here is what the current zone allows, because that's an important point. This is not a residential zone, so this is a rural zone. And much of rural planning in New Brunswick, you find these types of zones, rural zones, mixed use zones. Rural zones are basically trying to encompass what's really there on the ground. So what you find a mixture of houses, camps, commercial uses, conservation uses, forestry, institutional. And these are things you can build as of right. So you can get a building permit. You can set up an agricultural use. That includes livestock. That includes processing and wholesaling farm produce and farm products. All types of agriculture activities allowed. So barns and such can be built. There's other stipulations with Livestock Operation Act, but essentially there's a wide variety of uses that could be built here as of right. That said, on this list, you cannot find seafood warehouse in operation. It's not permitted. So that's why we're here today. The site here, this is an aerial from GUMB, just shows the kind of shape of the existing site with the gravel pit mostly there appearing in white. You can see the rock. And you can also see the residences, some of the residents. There's a couple more here missing from the old aerial photography, but there's residents along Don de Dew Drive, and then there's the campground, Island View Campground. But it's largely to the north is just agricultural woodlands. I did a site visit here in the spring and took some drone photography, which really gets a picture of what's on the site. You can see the St. Croix Island in the distance, which is, as we know, a National Historic Site, International Historic Site. You can see the Bayside Cemetery, the homes, and the access drive to the existing gravel pit. So this is more of a picture of the gravel pit fill that slopes down to the river, and some of the homes that are built on Don de Dew Drive there in the foreground, the background, and more pictures of the river. Here's a view looking from the river to the site, and you can see the site is barren of vegetation due to years of excavation. You see northward, the site is more hilly, and the property over is forested and vacant. So the discussion. Lobster distribution centers or seafood warehousing operations are not permitted instead. The rural plan has objectives to guide amendment processes. All rural plans have these. The overall plan objectives are meant to protect the area, preserve rural character, regulating development that would affect lifestyles of residents, protect against pollution, protect quality of water of Shancook Lake, preserve the aesthetic beauty of the area, encourage cooperation with communities around development, to encourage public access to the intertidal zone, and encourage protection of agricultural viable farmlands. So the fact there's a rural plan is why we're having a discussion. If there's no rural plan, this would just get a building permit, case closed. But because there's a rural plan, we have to think about all these things, and it's an opportunity for the public to be engaged in the process. So the Bayside Rural Plan was crafted with careful consideration for how to protect the area's natural beauty, character, environment, but while hosting development, including regional scale economic activity like the Bayside Industrial Port. There's a balance there that was tried to be achieved and has been for many years. In consideration of this proposal, it means it's important that the development would fit within the overall character of the proposed location and not negatively impact surrounding areas or archaeological resources or the intertidal access that is in existence. So if there's a viable way to limit these land use conflicts, either through prescriptive zoning or terms and conditions, then these would need to be imposed. So at the same time, in a broad view, viable shorefront for this kind of development is becoming a scarcer commodity along the eastern seaboard of North America and even in our region. So the Fundy coastline has received a number of recent proposals and has had a couple of these facilities built to store and distribute lobster. It serves economic purpose. But they don't always mesh with rural plans. We had a situation in the Beaver Harbor in 2018 where there was an application for one of these to be similar or compatible with that zone, and planning staff recommended against it, and the commission agreed and rejected the application. There was also concerns with that location in terms of the access to the site. It was inappropriate for trucking. You'd have to go through a shared driveway with a number of residences. So there's serious concerns here to be addressed and not taken lightly. And sometimes these applications don't always work. But at the same time, if you can think about the potential for how it could be accommodated, you have to take all the concerns seriously and think about it in terms of what would be the conditions for the development to proceed. So the terms and conditions, as I said, need to be carefully reviewed because there's significant neighbor concerns about this proposal. And the issues that were raised with our office included lighting, noise, odor, pollution, seagull attraction, impact to a site in view of the historic St. Croix Island, and loss of natural beauty or enjoyment of property. So as this proposed development is not of the same scale of impact as uses in the Bayside Industrial Park, which allows for heavy industrial uses, it does not fit within the current rural zone. It required the creation of a new zone, light industrial zone for Bayside. By way of this amendment, the minister would be establishing new policies and proposals to set criteria for similar uses in the future that may require rezoning. Policies and proposals guide any rezoning process. They are the plan. And this is one of the points with the spot zoning concern. Spot zoning, when done in a negative way, it is incoherent with the plan. But the plan is the policies, the proposals, the objectives. The map is one of the ways to implement it. The map, the colors in the map is not the plan in its entirety. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So two shades of color doesn't mean you have a incoherent plan. This zone is also limited in its permitted land uses by establishing clear definitions of what seafood warehousing operation is, what light industrial use is, as distinct from heavy industrial uses. I'll go through these in detail. So this is really what the regulation would look like as we have put it forward. So first, you'd be substituting some policies for the industrial policies for Bayside, broadening them. The policy would read like this. It is a policy to permit the continued development of an aesthetic, functional, and environmentally safe industrial park upon those lands zoned for an industrial park, as shown on the map. So that's the existing industrial map, industrial park in the Bayside Port. And so it's a policy, this is additional, to permit intensive forms of industrial development within that park. So directing the heavier industrial uses there. Is a policy to establish new areas of light industrial development and carefully plan locations that facilitate greater economic development in the planning area, protect environmentally sensitive areas, and minimize conflicts with existing land uses. It's a policy to limit new light industrial areas to locations that have historically featured industrial types of development so as to prevent encroachment in traditionally agricultural or rural residential areas. And so this is another key piece here where I'm saying that if this were to pass, it's not that every property could rezone to light industrial. Here, where you actually have an existing gravel pit, which is an industrial type of activity, it would be coherent with the plan as it's laid out here. And there may be other locations that would want to rezone to light industrial that have been industrial historically in Bayside, outside of the port, outside of that industrial park. And there are a number of properties like that that currently aren't zoned for what they have been in the past. So there may be opportunities for some of these to rezone, but I continue. It is proposed that any industrial uses maintain screening buffers between themselves and adjacent properties and public roadways. And if there was a rezoning application, the following would have to be considered. Compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood, especially adjacent land uses, on such considerations as noise, traffic, dust, smell, lighting, outdoor storage, scale and nature of the operation, visual buffers, topography, soil, drainage, floodplains, outdoor storage, air, water, soil pollution, and any other aspect of proposed development that could pose a danger to the residents or contaminate the environment. So anytime there would be a rezoning application in the future, if this were to be approved, the following things would have to be taken into consideration. Couldn't be ignored, couldn't be left out of the discussion. But also getting specific, what would these uses mean? So aquaculture uses, talking about hatching, raising, breeding, but not processing, rendering. That's heavy industrial, so that would not be permitted. Seafood warehousing means, and this is what this application is for, this is a specific proposal for this, but the zone would be bigger than that perhaps if there was used in another location. But in this location, they're proposing to use it for a seafood warehousing operation. So it means a parcel or building where commercial dependent fishery facilities are located, including structures for packing of fin fish, crustaceans, mollusks, amphibians, and including related activities such as wholesale, retail sales, product storage, distribution, offloading docks, shore-based facilities as necessary for aquaculture fishery operations, but does not include processing, rendering, and the use does not exceed 2,800 square meters in total structural footprint. And then having additional definition for industrial use, light industrial use. And that means an operation which assembles, improves, treats, compounds, packages, stored good in a manner which does not create noticeable noise, dust, odor, smoke, glare, vibration outside the building in which the activity takes place. So very low impact on surrounding properties. Where storage of goods is properly screened review and does not generate, in the opinion of the commission, objectionable amounts of truck traffic, and also does not exceed 2,800 square meters in total structural footprint. So this is what that zone would look like. In the light industrial zone, any land, building, or structure may be used for the purpose of and no other purpose than one or more of the following: seafood warehousing operation, an aquaculture use, and a light industrial use, which is general, as I just defined it, subject to terms and conditions as may be applied by the commission, which means the PRAC, the planning committee. These kinds of files are treated monthly, and they're very common. There's neighborhood notices that are involved with that. So every property owner within the radius is notified if something like that were to happen. In this case, this is a specific proposal for a seafood warehousing operation though. This is where the list of zones would change. And the next piece is the rezoning for the particular parcel or portion of a parcel, portion of a PID as listed here, from rural to light industrial. And this is shown on the map. So the map becomes part of the regulation. And it's subject to terms and conditions, was also form part of the regulation. And the terms and conditions, there's 12 and a few subclauses, and they're meant to address a lot of the concerns. And this is where some of the discussion, I think, will probably surround as well. But first, with regards to the buffer and visuals and aesthetics, that a 5 meter wide, 3 meter high vegetated berm be established with conifer saplings to the satisfaction of the development officer, so as to visually screen the development from the lands with the property identification number. I'm not gonna read that, but it's the next door neighbor property and the waters of St. Croix River prior to September 1st, 2021. That a screening medium be installed to remove any animal parts and debris prior to dewatering of the holding tanks and the discharging of water back into the St. Croix River. So this came up through the review with the provincial agencies. They recommended this to prevent any pollution getting the river through, like bans from lobster claws or anything like that. That would not be allowed. 3, that prior to the development of an intake-outtake pipeline, a license of occupation be obtained from DNR, and that the development adhere to the New Brunswick Coastal Area Protection Policy. And one key thing with the Coastal Area Protection Policy is it would need to make sure that those pipelines do not impede intertidal access. So if you're walking along the beach, that can't be a big impediment to walking along the beach or the foreshore. That any waste or dead animals associated with the operation be contained and appropriately sent to a landfill so as not to create an noxious odor for adjacent properties, attract wildlife, or cause an environmental hazard. So meaning if there's dead lobsters, they need to be contained so it's not smelling and not causing an odor on adjacent properties, and they need to be dealt with appropriately. 5, that exterior lighting be shielded and directed downward so as to limit light pollution and not preclude nearby residents from enjoying the view of the night sky. And this is critical because if there's a lot of security lighting, you could live next to this and you couldn't see the stars. That is impacting your enjoyment of your life in rural lifestyle. So there's a lot of technology here that could be put in place that prevents that from happening. And this would be inspected in the building inspection part of the process. That no noise or odor be that noise or odor be limited in the following ways. So these are the ways to control those issues. With the exception of transportation vehicles, any industrial machinery, processes, products, or equipment associated with the use shall not be located outdoors. So there couldn't be a chiller plant or a machine outside of the structural footprint of the building. It would have to be inside. And ventilation certainly would have to be located outdoors, but the ventilation would have to be directed on the north side of the building. And I'll show you what that looks like on the site plan. So all openings on the exterior of the main building, excluding those required by code, have to be in the north facing wall. So that's the furthest away from residents. And that was, the applicant was talking to some neighbors about that, and that was a kind of suggestion. The main building's exterior walls be constructed with sound damping materials. So the activity occurring inside, the idea being that any sounds are mitigated against that are inside the building. D, making a noise likely to cause a public nuisance or disturb inhabitants, such as backup beepers or idling transportation vehicles, be prohibited between the hours of 11 and 7 a.m. That if a subdivision occurs on the property and then a private access route maintained by a road association be required to be established to give access to the property, the area being rezoned. That all the development activities apply with all applicable acts, permits, and approvals as required, including but not limited to St. Croix corridor, air quality regulation, water quality regulation, well water regulation, Seafood Processing Act, and the Species at Risk Act. So just if they get, what I'm saying, if they get a rezoning approved, doesn't mean they don't have to comply with every other law, federal or provincial, that may apply. That the maximum height of any buildings or structures be limited to 10 meters from the final grade. That the development be in substantial conformity with the site plan, Schedule D2, which we've already seen, but I'll show you again. Then any connection to or use of a public right-of-way be subject to review by DTI, the Department of Transportation. Now, prior to the issuance of development permit, an AIA, archaeological impact assessment, be done where required by the Department of Tourism, Heritage, Culture, and submitted to the development officer as evidence. So there's potential that some spots may have artifacts that could be at risk. So before any development occurs, this needs to be reviewed by Department of Tourism, Heritage, Culture, archaeologists. And this is critical because given the amount of concerns that are embedded in this proposal with neighbors, having the terms and conditions is one thing, enforcing them seems like another. But one of the things with Community Planning Act and one of the very strong enforceability clauses that exist in the Act is that if you breach any of the terms and conditions that are set down by the minister, then you potentially lose your rezoning and the land use would have to cease. So that said, there's a high risk for the operator if he or she decided, and he or she of the future, because it's talking about heirs, assigned successors, if they fail to live by the conditions, And the commission does a lot with regard to enforcement. So we would be a point of contact on this for local people if there was a concern. In the to date of 2020, we've done just over 100 enforcements in rural areas. And I had just confirmation today, we have 85% compliance rate, and we expect 100% in short order. So we do this, we do enforce, and this is something I think people may not be aware of. So Schedule D1. D1 here is the rezoning map. This area in gray would be the only portion that would be zoned for light industrial. It's a large property, but it's just this location where that land use could occur. And this is the site plan which would regulate the development. They can't build anything other than this if this were to be approved. The orientation of the building, the distance, the locations, the vegetation, the types of vegetation, the location of the pipeline, location of parking. This regulates that. If there was their variance to this that was minor, that might be acceptable, I would have to review that. But if there was something that was a major deviation, there would be another public hearing requirement. So no other building than this can be built. It has to be done according to the site plan. So back to the agenda. We finished 1. We're now going to go to 2. So this is where, again, 1 to 2 minutes. I will cut you off if you go over. We want to keep it on topic. We want to have people, talk about the land use concerns, talk about the rezoning, the process, all that's on topic. But we're going to try to avoid off-topic subjects and repetition. I'm going to remind people if they're going to repeat comments that have already been made. I'm going to ask, please try to point to something that hasn't been raised yet. So what I'd like people to do, if you wish to talk, I'm going to promote you to a speaking role. You won't be seen but you will be heard. So make sure your mic is unmuted. And if you're on the phone, you're calling into this meeting, dial *9, and that will show a raised hand, and as me, the chair of the meeting, I'll see that, and I'll promote you to a speaking role. I'll name the last 4 digits of your phone number. So I'll say 3141, you're up next, or so on. But for people who are in the Zoom application, I'll see your names, and I'll just I'll call you by name. And yep, so we can begin now. And just a reminder, the applicant will have a chance to respond to questions about the application at the end of this public comment portion. And then I will have a chance to respond to questions after they do, and then we'll conclude the meeting, and this transcript will go to the minister. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the public who are in attendance. And I have a few people already who are raising their hands, and we'll try to get to everybody here as it comes in. So, all right. Okay, I got Carol Oddens who wishes to speak. So Carol, I'm gonna put you on. You might have to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to give my input this evening. First off, in representing my elderly mother, she is a co-owner of the large adjacent PID property to the north. I feel, and she feels, that having a lobster warehouse will without doubt devalue their property and make it much less appealing for a prospective buyer. And this will affect other Bayside neighbors in the same manner. Representing myself, I am a New Brunswicker who was born in St. Stephen, lived in Bayside when I was young, moved to Fredericton where I currently live. I have, over the course of 50 plus years, returned yearly to Bayside to spend time with family at the homestead. I was married in St. Andrews. I have vacationed and camped there and plan to buy a property in Bayside in my retirement. This is why I have a vested interest in the community. My first concern is environmental and is regarding the water from the St. Croix River, which will be pumped in and out of the warehouse to maintain the live lobster. Although the water being discharged may not contain any large parts, as the screening medium is a condition set out, the discharge will contain significant amounts of lobster urine, lobster excrement, bacteria, and sediment. We are talking storage of 300,000 lobsters. This will result in suspended solids being discharged, as well as an alteration to the pH of the water. Over time, this can have an impact on the water quality, affecting the aquatic life significantly. We must be stewards of our environment. Secondly, regarding land use, I'm not certain whether the noise will be an infringement on the neighboring.
Carol, I'm just going to ask you to summarize the last point here and be expedient with it, please. Thank you. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself now.
Hello?
Hi, you're back on.
Okay. So regarding the land use, I feel that the noise from the trucking will have a significant impact on neighboring properties and have an impact on the Route 127 traffic safety. Also, smell from similar facilities in neighboring communities with this has not been controlled. So there's a big question there. The community members do not deserve the income of these negative impacts, including the nearby campground, who's a small business owner attracting tourists to Bayside. Thirdly, many sections of Department of Local Government have reviewed this proposal and have given several recommendations. However, they determined that the proposal did not reach the threshold of an environmental impact assessment. Here's the problem I see with this.
Carol, I'm going to have to stop you now because we're past the 2 minutes. So thank you very much. And I'm going to go to the next person now. Caroline and Julian Walker, you're on. You might need to unmute yourself. Caroline, Julian, we might come back to you. Okay. Stan Chaptiani.
Thank you. I'm not sure. Am I unmuted? Can you hear me, Alex?
Yeah, I can hear you. Oh, I think you muted yourself.
Alex, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Two points, Alex. The first one is one of the issues that comes up with, unfortunately, with many industries is that when they leave, they often leave things not completely restored to an acceptable site. And in this particular case, I'm wondering if in your zoning considerations, whether you would be possible to have a legacy fund or a bond that's posted by the applicant, so that if there are legacy issues, for instance, if the piping or some of the work that goes across the public access to the beach or the provincial lands of the beach are not resolved properly, or if there are continued stormwater management or discharge that isn't handled properly, that there would be some way of having that dealt with through a bond or some kind of a separate fund that's put up by the company. The second thing, which is quite different, is a concern around spot development. And when I look at this area, it's an area that in many ways is a legacy issue in that there's been quarrying there done for decades. As you've said, there's been probably uncontrolled runoff and sedimentation from that area that hasn't been looked at and properly over the decades. So I'm wondering why you wouldn't look at a proper industrial zoning area, so that rather than a spot development for one industry, that you would look at that whole quarry area and some of the impact area, and have the property owners, I think that's the Muirs, submit a proper subdivision and plan that could be identified as light industrial. And then you would have the opportunity to put in proper roads, proper stormwater management. There could be much more increased or larger increased buffers from the residents that are there. And there could be a proper overview for an area that in many ways could be rehabilitated in a much more positive way if it was coordinated in a large way. So those are my two comments.
Okay. Dan, I think that concludes your time. So do you have one last expedient?
Well, no, just going on with a proper subdivision plan. Besides having a road, stormwater, you could have proper sewer and water use. There's a whole lot of things that could be properly planned, because at this particular point with a spot development, you have one thing, but the rest of the area, there may be another spot development, there may just be continued legacy issues with the quarry, and there is an opportunity to rehabilitate in an intelligent way. So that's all. Thank you.
So it looks like we have Alan Reed. Alan, will promote you to speaking role. And just a reminder, everybody, we're trying to keep to 2 minutes, given there's we have 74 participants tonight. Not everybody's indicated they wish to speak though. So if you wish to speak, please do so by typing into the chat, "I wish to speak," or use the raise hand function. And if you're phoning in again, dial *9. I'll see that and I'll promote you to speaking role. So Alan Reed, you're up next. Thank you.
Can you hear me, Alex?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, so just to clarify, I'm with another person, Leaf, the camp owner or the owner of Island View Campground. So if my hand's raised again, it would not be for me speaking the second time. Just want to speak on behalf. I am a seasonal camper at Island View, so I'm very familiar with the Bayside area. And having being a former chairperson on a planning advisory committee, I really kind of took notice to this application. And what I want to zone in on, no pun intended, is the definition of light industrial use and the application. I believe that in looking at the application and the definition of light industrial, is that it's tailored to this application. And there's so many other businesses and other types of industries that would fit light industrial. I think that the definition is incomplete, and I do believe more thought should be going into it for economic development of this area. How many other businesses might be attracted to the Bayside area if they know that they have this definition, and what else can be made of it? Getting to this part of the land picked for rezoning, I am taking exception to it as the area that is picked of the 85 hectares. They're using 3.18, which is only 3.6% of that land. And they put it right beside the existing houses, which are rural but residential. And they're only 25 meters away from the closest property. That being said, looking at your presentation tonight, you indicated the 5-meter buffer with a 3-meter high buffer zone, and the building's going to be 10 meters high. So the building's going to dwarf any visible buffer that is ever intended with this plan. So I guess I just conclude is that the location of this business, there is a spot in Bayside for it, but not at this location so closely nestled to the houses.
Thank you, Alan. And that concludes your remarks. Did you have one last thing you'd like to say?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to try Carolyn and Julian Walker again. Okay. Carolyn, Julian, if you wish to speak, you. Oh.
Okay.
You're on.
Okay. So my family is a longtime resident of Bayside. My father and mother have lived there. They're no longer living, but they lived there for the last 70 years. I think we want to speak a little bit about the soul of Bayside. It is a very self-reliant rural area. Many rural entrepreneurs have had success there. I'm thinking of Claude McFarlane, who owned the corner store where the Island View Campground is now, Ralph and Harry Bartlett. All these people are buried in the cemetery, including my parents, about 50 feet from the edge of the current quarry. The owners of the land, the Muirs, have been very respectful of the cemetery. They have been in touch with families over the years very carefully to advise of any change in the bank and that sort of thing. They are a local family that we can talk to. I don't think we can talk to one of the largest lobster processing companies in the world in the same way we can talk to the Muirs. I sang in a choir with Jack Muir, a wonderful man. And I just feel that we're losing something of our Bayside community when we ignore the fact of respect for our no longer living citizens. And this is a very close proximity to that cemetery. I was quite concerned that you did not refer, Alex, to the cemetery as something that had been brought up, because I did, on behalf of the family, I did notify you of our concern. Again, it is not in our backyard concern. We very much live with development in our area. I personally worked at the tuna plant. I unloaded tuna boats, as many local people have. We have major freighters going by our property every week from the industrial park area. And we certainly feel that the industrial park, with some work by the government, could easily absorb a project like this, rather than plunk it right in the middle of a rural area and a cemetery which is very unique.
Julian, do you have one last point to raise? Because we're just at the 2-minute mark.
No, I just am pleased to be able to speak and welcome the words of other commentators.
Thank you. Alexander Reed, I'm going to put you on.
Alex, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I'm a resident of Bayside. I'm representing myself, my fiance, Amy Greenlaw, as well as her parents, Melvin and Rose Greenlaw, of which are very large property owners within the Bayside and have been for nearly 200 years. The Greenlaw family's been here. The issue that we see multiple issues with this proposal. One of the issues that I'd like to touch on that Carol Otten's got cut off on is the lack of a need for an environmental impact assessment. I read through all the proposed documents, and one of the chief concerns that I have, given that a lot of the adjacent property owners here are very much in the farming community, actually directly across the road from the PID in question is a small farmer who is an organic farmer, as well as, I'd say, 2 PIDs over, there's another small organic farm, as well as a property that I happen to help work on. We have livestock. One of my chief concerns is the displacement of wildlife and how that will affect these farmlands. We already have a deer population issue in Bayside as well as St. Andrews. More people are familiar with St. Andrews deer problems, but it happens here very much. The influx of varmint, including rodents and potential predators, with this proposal has a big influence. And through my history of working in industry like this, such as Pat Sherrill on Deer Island, I am a little concerned with the air quality issues that have been noted in the proposal as kind of a null and void. Whereas if you're within a kilometer of Pat Sherrill on Deer Island, you're well aware that it is there. Those would be some of our major concerns, along with, Carolina Julian's, too disrespectful to the deceased, as well as Stan brought up some very strong arguments. I also believe that Alan Reed brought up some very key arguments in the use of the property, as well as I don't believe anybody has yet to touch as to why it shouldn't be in the vacant lots that are at our current industrial park.
Alex, do you want to make a final remark?
Sure. I personally, as well as the entirety of our family, would like to object to this, as there has been a port expansion project that took place to allow for Jammer Materials Incorporated to allow for industry such as this to have space within the industrial park. And I think that's where they should go.
All right, we're going to go to Kathy Bacchus. Kathy, you just need to unmute there.
Can you hear me, Alex?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, Alex. The people that have rather lengthy presentations, they could submit them to you. Can they not, up until September the 9th?
Kathy, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to respond to questions at the end.
Oh, okay. All right. I just had questions, sorry. So I'm done.
No, maybe I misunderstood. Please ask the question. I'm writing down the points. If there's questions, I'll respond to it at the end for the flow of this, if that's all right. So please ask away, and then I will circle back to them. Okay.
Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
I'm just wondering, this whole process, we sort of went through it on the Strang Road when there was an asphalt plant. The residents objected to the rezoning. So I'm familiar with how this process works. So the residents can still submit their submissions or their objections and whatever to this. And you will take into account their objections. And I just think that's important for people to understand. And I know you've probably already said it, but I just wanted to reiterate it, that there's no final decision made yet. And these public objections are very important. And these comments are very important to this whole process. And that's why I'm very pleased to see you said you had 74 participants tonight. That's wonderful. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kathy. All right. We have Lindy Townsend. Lindy, you're up.
Oh, hello, Alex.
Hi.
You have a heavy burden. I just want to echo Kathy's statements about process, and we worked very well with Alex with our comments and worries and concerns, and I know that he will give everybody due process. So again, Kathy's correct in saying that it's really, really important to use this process, and usually you can get to an amicable solution or something that fits everyone. I know these are questions, or I might just make the comment. If this is an economic determinant, is it automated or will it provide jobs? And also, I may have missed this, Alex, and it would be my fault. What does the construction of the building look like? We see where it's located, and I understand the concern, and I know you don't want them repeated about land values and how close they are to the current residents. I do want to add to Mr. Julian Walker's comments about the light industrial park and what Alexander Reed, I think, stated. there were terms and conditions on the industrial lots at the current industrial park, and they remain vacant. But the terms were that they should build within 2 years. So those were ignored. And if people have the ability to ignore terms and conditions, and a rightful place for something like this lobster storage would be out there, why is it that those people have been able to just ignore the terms and conditions? And I think that Bayside is a great community. My best friends lived out there. I watched Gary McDonald build his house. I helped Stacy Arsenault buy the property that he's currently on. So
can you
people
make one last remark? Just at the
last remark is, I really think that somebody should investigate the industrial park and hold their feet to the fire so that the residents of Bayside can have that lobster company look at those properties that are more appropriate.
Thank you.
So thank you, Alex.
I'm gonna put, I see Alan Reed wants to speak again, which is a new person, and there's a few people in the comments. I'll get to you. I'm gonna go to Mary Kennedy Bardsley next. Mary, you're up.
Thank you. This is a marvelous way to hear one another's point of view, and I remain most appreciative. I want to start out by saying I welcome Little Bay Lobster Company. Our province is a poor province. We need investment in our province, and we need jobs, even 6 jobs. However, the industrial park was designed to complement such industries, and I see no need to reproduce what has already been produced. I appreciated the last woman's comments about all that beautiful land in the industrial park, which for 25 years I've been driving by, that is not used. It certainly is an available spot. But what I think is most important to me is that in this oftentimes weary world, where the divisions are so blatant in the United States, it's the home that we depend on for teaching, learning, practicing grace, acceptance, and peace. It broadens from the home to the neighborhood, and then I think to the community at large. The neighborhood in question deserves the security and the opportunity for personal family development. Be that children safely riding their bikes, swimming in the river, walking the beach, family gatherings such as a garden party or backyard barbecue, weddings, anniversaries, or simply meeting and mingling with neighbors in a protected, environmentally and physically safe neighborhood. The proposed facility would seriously jeopardize, if not obliterate, the perimeters of safety and security of all such activities. That sacred cemetery and the people who walk by it deserve the peace that is there now. Little Bay Lobster Company should be able to be welcomed in the province of New Brunswick, and with some ingenuity and with some imagination and some forbearance, they can find another site.
Mary,
I'll just say one thing. I applaud the idea of the industrial park, which is closer to me than the proposed site. It's simply a matter of principle. Principle. Thank you.
thank you. All right. We have John Gardner. John, you just need to unmute there. Good to go.
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay. So a couple of things. Since this, in the last week, I've been talking to a number of the concerned parties, including the neighbors and also some people who are involved in the aquaculture industry. What I'm hearing overwhelmingly is that there is no need, want, nor desire to put this project in this particular location. There is a location that would be perfectly suitable for it. The idea of doing spot zoning really takes away the security of the zone system. When you have zones already existing and then you're just going to drop in other little projects as they come about, I really don't think that's appropriate. The other issue that I have is I've done a lot of research on this particular company, and I know that they are a child company of an American company. My question is to the company, why are you bringing a development like this over the border when it would be much cheaper to do it at home? It doesn't seem to make any sense to me, and it's not making a lot of sense to any of the residents either. Maybe that can be addressed by the company at the end.
Thanks, John. All right. I'm going to put, if you have a request to speak and you've written in the comments, I'm going to go scan through those in a moment, but I'm going to promote Alan Reed back to a speaking role. Alan, you're going to be on in a moment.
Hello.
Hi.
Could you hear me? Hi, Alex. This is Lee, the owner of Island Mill Campground. We bought the business from last year. We are new owners. And the first thing I want to say is I'm not going to go against Little Bay Lobster. I'm doing business here, and he wants to do business here because it's a lovely land for sure, very nice. My question is to our government, the planning department, because the industry park is not far away, and we are trying to rezone that rural residential land for light industry. 17 years ago, I'm a Chinese. 17 years ago, I came to Canada and, fell in love with the beauty of the nature and the harmony between human beings and the earth. I have seen in China, many local governments, they put their power and business people's money together and change the world so quickly. They rezone one land to accommodate one business and then rezone another land to accommodate another business. And I was amazed to see how fast it can change the city. And the investor have no rights, no security. And it's just, I don't have to talk about the consequence because everyone right now, they can see that we are suffering the most serious pollution in the whole world right now. So my question to you is, what's your long-term strategy for this land? If you had a strategy, if you had a plan before, is today's rezoning behavior conform to the plan? And if you didn't have any long-term plan before in the past, are you going to make one right now? And how, if you look into the future, how are you going to see the future of this land? Like, are you going to rezone one piece for this business and rezone another piece for another business? Or just place it in where it's supposed to be, industry park? That's all my questions. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. All right. Looks like we have gone through everybody who's done the raise hand and wishes to speak. Certainly, there's some people here, I think, in the comments who wrote in they wish to speak. So just 1 minute. Well, I got. we go. Gary James, you're up. Gary, can't hear anything right now, so if you're speaking, there may be something with the mic. I can come back to you if you're having issues. Let's give you another moment or two to sort out the microphone. Gary, I'm going to come back to you, but I'll just keep your hand raised and I'll come back to you. Stacy Arsenault. Stacy, you're up.
Hey, Alex, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, thanks, Alex, for the opportunity to speak, and thank you, Mary Barsley. Well put. We're relocating back here, and for all those reasons, that's why we picked this beautiful place. My questions, and the rezoning's been asked, but more specifically, I think, why not the industrial park? I want to hit on that one again. As well, one of the regulations, the first one that you have has the PID ID of the adjacent property, 1593485. And I'm just curious that we don't really know who the landowner is there, and it's been bought, and there seems to be a lot of, we understanding maybe how they feel on this process. And then finally, we're all about this community, and I think what Lee is talking about, I want to echo that, is let's build a long-term strategy, work with the community. And right now we feel we don't have a voice, and with Greg passing last year, we didn't have an MLA, and through this whole process we just don't feel we have a voice. So let's have a strategic plan, a long-term plan where we can work together. And I welcome Little Lobster to our community, but in the right place in the industrial zone. So Alex, thank you for the time, and I'll that's it.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. All right. I'm gonna come back to Gary James if the microphone situation is resolved.
Alex.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, Gary, you're echoing.
Yeah, is that better?
That's better.
Okay, so I guess I'm calling in more as a resident than chair of the Bayside Estate. Just for the record, we had a little conflict of interest with some of the other members. Obviously, Donna Vera is the land applicant. Hollis Bartlett is with the Service Commission, and Pat Mowat's with the province with the agriculture side of things. So as me, can I represent the community as a whole or as an LSD rep? So I'm kind of going to just do a personal venture here and comment, I guess. I'm not going to regurgitate what everybody's points they made. But, me who worked on the community plan years ago, will say, currently it's kind of outside our plan. But at the same time, I really encourage the landowner to do something there. Like, I'm thinking more like a residential venture than industrial. Speaking about the industrial side of things, I'm a strong believer on moving that type of industry to the port, because that was what they, sold to us 15 years ago, going to encourage the industrial use down there. The core area is at about the same elevation, so I would think that would work ideally for pumping, characteristics there. I guess it's the precedent that's the concern. Once that happens, where does it stop? Visually, the United States always has a concern of what Bayside, we looking back over the United States, have a concern of what it looks like. And, we want to maintain that rural reserve on both sides of the United States and Canada. Yeah, I guess that's basically it. The precedent and industrial parks there for that reason. And, you know, I'm all for the jobs and the industry. I don't think environmentally it's a disaster. I think it can be
Jerry,
dealt with.
just if you could make one last comment.
Yeah, well, this the precedent of changing the zoning, I guess, is my concern. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
All right, we have Gerald Harris on. Gerald, might just need to unmute.
Is it working?
It's working.
All right, you and I have talked before. You had my views. Now, the old golden rule, he who has the gold usually rules. This is a big international company. My concern is, how many times has our government allowed zoning in the light of this light industry alongside residential subdivision? Excuse me. When we spent millions for that industrial park. But anyway, that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Gerald. All right. Heather Heath is up.
Thank you, Alex. I want to echo the idea of a strategic plan, and I object to any application by any company at this time to rezone rural land for industrial purposes outside of the Bayside Industrial Park until such time as we have had an opportunity to develop that long-term strategic plan. I think it is time to assess higher value to the preservation and protection of the natural environment along the St. Croix River corridor over its value as a resource to exploit for profit. This piece of land has been exploited for 70 years. This is no way to restore that land and to honor, as has been said, those who lie beside it and those who live beside it. I think that's it for tonight.
Thank you, Heather. All right, we have Rod Cumberland up. Rod, there you go.
Hi, Alex, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great, thank you very much. First off, I'm all for jobs because our riding definitely needs jobs in this area, although I hear this plant may just generate 6. My first question is about EIAs. And I don't know whether it's a question or comment, but I was involved with EIAs for 22 years at Natural Resources. My concern with EIAs, number one, none was done on this. I don't understand that. Number two, they're done independently. So every project is looked at individually rather than looking at collectively. If you have a pile of businesses in one area, someone at some point in time has to look at the collective impact on the environment from everything that's happening at the same time. That's a huge fault in government currently. The second thing is we've lost a line at Aroko in St. Stephen. We've lost a gypsum plant in Macadam, and we have all kinds of lobster fishermen in this same area. Who in government is looking at the impact, the financial and economic impact that this will have competing with our lobsters that are already here? Who's looking after the well-being of the local people, the industries and the employers and the employees in our area? And again, you know, I'm not dishing the jobs, but someone at some point in time, when we keep doing this and bringing people in from outside and allowing them to bring their money in and do what they want to do, we wind up closing down and losing local jobs. And sooner or later, someone has got to wake up to what's causing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. We have Kim Reeder up.
are you?
Good. I can hear you, Kim.
Okay, fantastic. I just also wanted my concerns noted for sure. The LSD plan that's currently in place has a number of objectives. And I am wondering if you know, for your department, the planning department, you must put, you know, some currency to these plans. And I'm wondering what the point of planning is if it's not going to be followed. Secondly, I want to mention that the location in Bayside represents a hugely successful economy as it is. There's local driving ranges, there's campgrounds in both directions, there is a residential area, and those, of course, those residents bring their pensions, they bring their income, they spend them in our communities. And I guess my comment is that we as communities and the community of Bayside, but larger than that because it's a provincial issue, we have got to continue to design and build our own economy that not only fits within our environment, but complements it. We don't have to exploit our environment or our culture in negative ways to survive. We don't need to allow multinational corporations to plunk themselves in the middle of our residential zones. And that's what I would like to share with you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emma Simone, you're up next.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Just a couple things. I guess further to what others have said, I'd be really interested if the proponent has any reasoning why they decided not to locate in the port and why they decided to go forward with rezoning. I just think that'd be really helpful for people to understand, including the province in the transcript, in order to know, you know, they're supposed to be promoting the port. If industry doesn't want to locate in the port for certain reasons, it'd be good to know what those are. Also, just to add to Stan Choptiani's comment, I'm a little bit concerned with the fact that part of the PID is in the Shamcook watershed area, is part of my understanding. But like this section that we're taking out isn't. So to me, it would make more sense to subdivide the PID and then do the rezoning for a smaller parcel of land. But maybe you can explain to me why that's not what is happening right now. Yeah, those are the two big things that I wanted to add. Oh, and a well. I was wondering about a well for the property. I noticed in the paperwork, there was a mention that there was going to be a septic system for the employees, but there wasn't any mention of like a fresh water source other than like the intake-outtake pipe. So I was just wondering if they were planning on drilling a well and where.
Thanks, Emma. All right, we have Diane Munn who's on, and then we have a phone number ending in 1594. So Diane, you're up. You may need to unmute. Can you say hello? You may have a microphone issue. Just a second. Diane, I'm going to come back to you. Keep working on your microphone, and I'm going to go to the phone number ending in 1594. Oh, sorry. Dan, accidentally clicked you again. Still don't have you, sorry. Come back to you. So the phone number ending in 1594, you're up. I'm not sure if you're muted, but give you a second here. You may have to dial *6 if you may have muted yourself unintentionally. Oh,
okay, I'm good now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Alex, what I wanted to comment on is that we bought land there in the subdivision a few years ago, and we bought it in the subdivision for a reason. We thought we were safe We were quite excited to be in a subdivision with neighbors. And just a few years ago, another subdivision was approved by the planning department, the McDougall subdivision. So there's 2 subdivisions now that are right along the border of where this building is going to be. So what I can't understand is why you would approve these subdivisions, especially the one that's just done a few years ago, and then just now go and rezone next to it to build a great big plant such as this. Doesn't make sense. The other part that I wanted to mention is that we've spoken to real estate agents, and they say that our property values will plummet. And so we're kind of stuck with our homes because nobody's going to want to live next to such a place. I know if I knew this was going to be set up before, I would never even consider building my new home there. So this is a very important concern because I have a lot of investment in this, and so do all the other homeowners in the 2 subdivisions. So that's one thing, is our property values, let alone all the smells and interruptions it's going to cause to us, and as well as the complaints the government are going to receive from the neighboring folks. That's why I think it should be an industrial park, so that you can have harmony between residents and industries. Put them in the right part. That way you won't have any complaints. The other thing I wanted to mention really quickly is I want to echo, it was Kim. I too challenge as far as I thought that the plans were supposed to be reevaluated every 5 years, and as to my knowledge, they have not been. So why are we changing to rezone when we haven't even discussed the planning for the area in the first place within the last 5 years? So, and why have plans, as you said, if we're not going to follow them? And we do have a plan right now. It's rural. Why change it? Those are the two things I wanted to speak on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have Kristen Clark here, who's up next.
Hi there, Alex. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to raise the point that you've indicated the spot rezoning of that one area adjacent to the water, but there will need to be a road built to the site for truck traffic, unless they're going to use Don de Dieu, and I know they're not. So there needs to be some discussion about what impact that road will have and the additional truck traffic. How will this increased truck traffic impact the residential and farming properties that are across the road from where the road will have to come out? How's that going to impact in terms of safety on the 127? And as I say, the properties that are across from where that road is going to come out, which are residential. How much traffic will the property generate? I haven't got any kind of feel for that at this point. And I guess the second thing I would want to say is as has been stated by many others, why is this plant being put where it is when there is an industrial park nearby? And my assumption is it's because they can get the land cheaply there when there is land nearby that is more appropriately zoned for this kind of use. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Or Kirsten, sorry. We have Annalie Bartlett next.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
We're in the third house from the proposed site, and we've been here about 17 years. And when we were looking for land, when I came down here, I went down and walked on the beach, and I thought I'd found a hidden treasure. I think the beach area along here is one of the nicest beaches in Charlotte County. When you go down to the point in front of the proposed site, looking down the bay, there's just a breathtaking view, really. We're in very close proximity to St. Croix Island. Actually, by Google Map, we think we're closer than up at the federal site to look over the area. This is a very historical area here, and I was always very interested in that. And we're actually along here, all along here, we're sitting on land where Champlain actually planted his gardens in 1604. And it's clearly marked on his map, which are in Champlain's Island, a book by William Ganong. But here we've been able to enjoy nature at its best. We can sit on our porch, we can see seals over on the rocky ledges off the island at low tide. We see porpoises go by, eagles. You wake up in the morning to the sound of loons, and just its nature at its best. And of course, the stargazing is incomparable. We love to stargaze here, and have been enjoying teaching the grandchildren about it. Anyway, the prospect of losing all this to the noise, lights, pollution, traffic, smells of the lobster industry is frankly devastating to us. And we feel that the vacant land over there, it is a beautiful piece of land if it was rehabilitated and with the views and so on. And I think it could be put to so much better use. As we know, waterfront property is a treasure. And I wonder if they've ever considered building lots are a better use and have had a real estate assessment. Anyway, we're very opposed to having the lobster warehouse next door and feel that the place for it is in the industrial park. And unrelated to that,
one last
question.
Comment.
Yeah, has the U.S. side been contacted about this and would their environmental protection agency have concerns as our river, obviously the border is down the middle of the river. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. So it looks like I don't have any new people in the raised hand, have their hands raised here. If there's anybody in comments who indicated they wish to speak and they haven't yet, I'm going to go look through here, see if anybody has made it. Oh, we got a new one here. Margot Santoro. Margot, you're going to be up.
Did I unmute?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, thanks. So we live in the States. We live in New Hampshire, but I'm Canadian. And we bought a beautiful cabin right up the street from this proposed light industrial zone in 2004. We found it when we stayed at Island View Campground. So we have amazing friends and neighbors, and everything that everybody has said, I completely agree with. Diane Munn, the last comment about the US EPA, would they have a concern with the current administration? I sincerely doubt that very much, unfortunately. But I am really concerned about the pollution. Carol Ives initially said it. There's got to be a problem with that. There needs to be, like Rod Cumberland said, there really needs to be an EIA. I was on the planning board here in the town in New Hampshire where I lived for 9 years. And I've never seen anything like this spot zoning without it causing problems. So I'm opposed to where it is. Put it in the industrial zone. I agree with new jobs. I agree with all the positives, but I really would not like to see it there. St. Croix Island, you just look from 127 and see St. Croix Island. It's going to interrupt that pristine view. So that's it. Thank you very much for giving me the time.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. I'll give a few moments here for anybody who hasn't spoken yet. Please just type into the chat that you wish to speak or do a raise hand. Now, if you're calling in, dial *9 and your hand will be raised. Oh, I got Lillian Mitchell and Lisa Kowski. Lillian Mitchell, you're up next.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment on behalf of Fundy North Fishermen's Association. I'm the representative for lobster harvesters from St. Martin's to Campobello Island. And I'd say one of our concerns, although it's not a zoning concern, is that while I know that I've read some of the press releases and stuff that have gone on in relation to this, and although I've heard the developers say that most of these lobsters would be Canadian lobsters, without kind of any assurance of that and any type of planning, I'd be concerned.
Lillian, I just want to remind you, we're trying to stay focused on the land use issues. I know there's a lot of questions about what you're raising, and I'm not saying they're not valid. We can't really address those in a land use hearing. So I'm going to have to give you another chance to bring it back to the development, because that's really what this hearing's about. So please continue, but on topic. And you have to unmute yourself. Sorry, I muted you there.
No, that's okay. I don't think I'll be able to stay on topic then, so I'll just save it.
I do apologize for that, but that it is the nature of these hearings. We don't want to spend an undue amount of time talking about something which is it's not about the rezoning application. So Lisa Kowski, you're up next.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Oh, you need to unmute.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I think good range of input here. Many people are saying the same thing. A lot of talk about a strategic plan. The Bayside does have one, and Bayside the people in the community worked very hard to develop a rural planning statement, now a rural plan that does lay out long-term goals for the area. And this would be up for review, I believe next year would be the end of the first 5 years of the current plan, which would then give the entire community a chance to relook at long-term strategies and locations. This proposal is certainly not in keeping with that kind of planning. And I think people have pointed out well that there is a zone right now under the current plan in the industrial park, which is not limited to heavy industry. There is light industry in there now, including a warehouse. So that would be an appropriate location under the planning system that the province follows now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. We have Beverly Harris who wishes to speak. So Beverly, you're up.
Hi.
Hey.
On June 19th, 1990, Seaway Estates, the subdivision beside the proposed Bayside rezone property, was approved and registered by the province. Prior to that time, the properties were virtually unsaleable due to the horrific smell coming from the old tuna plant 1 kilometer away. Since its closure, 13 new upscale homes have been built on Don de Dieu Road, and many more in the Bayside area. I oppose rezoning the adjacent property for light industrial use. This will greatly impact the value of our homes, change the character and lifestyle for Bayside residents and tourists alike. Many government dollars have been spent developing the Champlain Industrial Park. I am sure the Bayside Port would welcome new business. Please do not rezone this property. Do not exploit our lands. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Just looking here to see if there's any new hands raised. Any comments here about people wishing to speak? If there's anybody else who wishes to speak, I'll give you a few more moments here to raise hand or put a comment to that effect in the chat. There's quite a few comments in the chat as well. I'm going to make sure that gets included in the transcript that goes to the minister as well. So okay, Jeff Munn, I'm not sure if you are a new person, but I'm going to promote you to speaking here. Jeff Munn, maybe you have already spoken, I'm not sure. Hello, Jeff? Oh, I think maybe I'm stuck. Maybe you've already spoken. Let me know if you haven't. Okay, so, nope. Okay, so just last call here. And again, I'm going to respond to some of the questions that were raised specifically about process or the regulation, planning type questions. And now we're going to turn to the applicant to briefly respond to the questions that were raised about their proposal specifically. And again, even for the applicant, I'm going to encourage you, and we'll actually chair the meeting in this regard. Make sure you stay on topic. We want to discuss here about the proposed development. So on behalf of the applicant here, I see we have few people who represent the applicant, but I'm not sure which ones wish to speak. So if you are one of the applicants, can you indicate that you wish to speak by doing a raise hand function? Oh, I see Rick Turner. Somewhere on the list. Not anymore. I'm not sure where Rick went. Is there any other of the applicants who wish to speak? Oh, Rick, there you are. Sorry. Rick, just give it a moment, but I think you might need to unmute. Oh, Jeff Munn does want to speak. Rick, I'm gonna disable you for now and go back to Jeff Munn. He was wishing to speak and couldn't. Jeff, I'm going to put you back on the speaking role here. Try unmuting your microphone. All right. I'm going to go to Gary McDougall. He's wishes to speak. Gary, try unmuting your microphone. Ask you to unmute your microphone there. There you are. I can hear you.
Hello. Alex?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to mention that I am opposed to the spot zoning, which would allow industry to be intermixed with rural residential areas. I feel industry, light or otherwise, should be in the Champlain Industrial Park. Even if the regulations there might have to be altered, whatnot, I don't see why light can't go in where heavy already has been. I can see where heavy wouldn't go in where light is, but not vice versa. Also, today we visited a lot on the waterfront there for sale by a company that was going to do a similar project as this one. And it's right on the waterfront, 6 acres, the same as what they're proposing here. And anyway, and if more room's needed at the industrial park, then maybe our long-term plan can look at how that might be accommodated by disrupting less people than what this one's going to do. There's been quite a bit of talk about this working gravel pit. I've lived here for 16 years, and during that time, the owner-operator took out a half dozen loads of sand or gravel a week, and now it has been unused for over a year, and currently it's grassed over on the floor of the pit where you said was all the white area. It's now grass, and there's a flock of geese staying there. We're situated right over top of it, so a 3-meter berm won't hide a 10-meter building the size of the Border Arena. And anyway, we have a plan, and we're only considering a change in this plan because of the application of one specific user. So I don't understand why that company can't be considered in this, as a person from Campobello wanted to. And I'll leave the time for somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And the last comment here I'm going to go to is Jeff Munn, and see if the technology's worked out. But if it's not going to work out, Jeff, I'm going to answer the question regarding to what you do next with your comments. And if you feel you didn't get heard correctly tonight, I'll explain what you do next, because there's still options for you to share your objections. Jeff? So Jeff Munn, if you wish to speak, I'm going to give you a chance here now, but I'm going to have to move on to the next part of the agenda if you're unable to work your microphone. Oh, okay. I see your comment. Thank you, Jeff. All right, so I'm going to move to the next part in the agenda, which is to do with the response from the applicant related to questions that were raised to them. So I will start with Rick Turner there. Rick, same thing with the people who are speaking from the public. Please keep your comments brief. And if any other applicants, I see Jonathan, Amy Schaffmaster as well on the line from the applicant side. So Rick, you can proceed.
Yes, Mr. Henderson and residents of the area. Rick Turner with Hughes Surveys and Consultants on behalf of Little Bay Lobster. You can hear me okay, can you? Thank you. In addition to doing this process, we did have an information meeting on the front end of this because we wanted people to be fully informed and to have an understanding of the project. Some of the understanding seems to have been lost over time. What we did do is we agreed to the larger circulation to involve more people in the process, and we also deferred on moving ahead because there were residents that weren't available through the early part of the year. So we wanted to make sure that they were here and they could voice their views. A live lobster distribution center to support the aquaculture industry will just become a component of what is St. Croix's history. The proposal is going to result in the gravel pit operation being totally completely unused and will be rehabilitated, the pit. Now there are no regulations on how it's operated, hours of operation, there's no limits, noise by equipment, no limits, dust control, no limits, and that could be a problem in the future, I would think. The site, in fact, is operating as a heavy industrial use. The area around the facility will be landscaped. The slopes will be rehabilitated and naturalized or hydroseeded. There's going to be berms constructed, and someone talked about a berm of that height not really providing a buffer. Well, the berms will also have tree planting on top of them. So over time, that's going to become a very effective buffer. Something that seems to have lost attention in this is the proponent has offered to do special attention to the area along the St. Croix River. He's going to put in treatments such as berms, tree planting, revegetating the area, and this is to address the preserving the aesthetic beauty and the reestablishment of an environmental buffer along the river.
Rick,
Basically,
if you could just summarize your comment, the last summary here, please. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. So he's working to work within keeping the St. Croix corridor. A Canadian company has been formed through Little Bay. It will employ 60 personnel, but it's also going to be paying federal and provincial taxes. Spin-off jobs result in truckers, fishermen. They'll hire survey companies, engineers, accountants, lawyers, and so on to operate in this environment.
Thank you, Rick.
Yes, just.
No, sorry, I got to move on here to the next people here. So.
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to introduce them, but that's fine. Carry on.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go to the next applicants here. So Amy Schaffmaster, you're up next.
Hi, Alex. So I just wanted to reiterate that we are a Canadian company that buys between 1 to 2 million pounds a year of Canadian lobster from Canadian fishermen, and we need a facility to house this lobster. From a land use standpoint, the lobster industry is underserved as far as having locations to carry on this type of operation because there's not enough facilities currently available, and that's why we need to build one. I'm hearing a main comment from a lot of people saying, you know, why can't we just use the industrial zone? And to speak to that, we did take a long look there. That was the first place that we looked. But there is no land available in that industrial park on the water, and the topography and distance to the water that is available doesn't work for the site that we need to build. We've looked for 2 years to find a site from St. John to St. Stephen's, and this is the only site that we've been able to find that will work for our project. Just quickly to address a few other concerns. Yes, we will provide full-time permanent jobs. All the procedures and work will be done inside the building. So I heard one man addressing concerns about the Patcherell plant, but there's a big difference between what they do and what we will be doing. They're a processing plant and we're not. Our lobster are live and they'll remain live. All the machinery and equipment.
Your final point, please?
What?
Could you just summarize your final point, please?
Oh, yep. So this is really the only location that we've been able to find that suits what we're trying to build. And we also want to have as least impact as possible and bring it back to its natural habitat. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, I have a Jonathan Schaffmaster, which I believe part of the applicant. Jonathan.
Alex,
hi, I can hear you.
can you hear me? Okay, I just want to address the impact situation. There will be absolutely no noise, no pollution. This is not a processing plant. There is zero smell. The additional traffic won't be 2 trucks a day on the Route 27, 2 or 3 trucks a day. It's absolutely a benign use and environmentally safe use. And to speak again to the industrial park, I started there. I did the research. I spent 3 years driving from St. John to St. Stephen, and there is no alternative available in that area for a viable lobster holding facility, which needs to be on the water. There is nothing in the Bayside Industrial Park that is an alternative. There just isn't anything. We started there, we looked there. So it isn't as if we're, I don't want to use the word the default mechanism. The first place we looked, and we looked hard, and we even did some studies on, there were filled areas. There was one site, but it's completely filled. It's 25 feet deep. It's 100 feet over the water, above the water, and it's filled with concrete and refuse that somehow has been deposited there while parts of the park have been developed. So I'm not trying, and the last thing is, this is not an attack on Canadian jobs or Canadian fishermen. Our company supports Canadian fishermen, and we buy an enormous amount of product in Canada.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. All right, so this concludes the hearing portion from the public and the response from the applicant. I'm going to take this time now to respond to some of the questions that were asked of the Regional Service Commission regarding the planning process. So if they were phrased as, objections, I'm not going to respond to every objection. I'll let your objections stand on the record. But the questions that were asked specifically, and I think starting first with Kathy Bach, she asked about how you who are wishing to still communicate to the decision maker, which is the Minister of Environment and Local Government, how you go from here to continue to share your objections. So you can write to the Minister of Environment and Local Government, and the notice, which is in the newspaper, has the mailing address, but the email address would be paul.jordan@gnb.ca. That's the provincial planning director. And he's taking the comments and the package. And when the new Minister of Environment and Local Government is in place, he or she is going to be reviewing that as part of the package when he or she makes a decision. So I'm going to I'll post that notice on our website, www.snbsc-planning.com, and that notice will be there for the next 2 weeks, and will give you instructions on where to send your letters of objection or concerns or questions. And there's other matters that might need to be addressed that are outside of land use, like the discussion about where the lobsters come from. And not saying that's not a valid question. I just can't, that's not part of the hearing for today. So we wanted to stay on topic and keep it timely and effective. We're still in the time limit here. So we're doing okay for time. That's good. We had a question specifically about the PID. I think we had a PID, and that was purchased just next door to the proposal, the closest residential property, I believe it was. And were they notified? That was the question was asked us. And I did double check when we sent out our notice, we mailed out a notice to everybody about this meeting. We sent the notice to the mailing address of the registered property owners who are currently the registered property owners of that next door property. There was a question asked of me, will this set a precedent? And so there is policy in here for how another rezoning like this could occur, and what would be the conditions need to be considered if this were approved. And now this is certainly not a done deal. This has to be decided on by the minister. So in some way it does allow for some things like this in other industrial type locations, but it has very defined, the policy very corners where this could potentially happen in Bayside in the future. So not just anywhere would be my response. And there was a question asked of me, how many times has the government and planning allowed industrial development next to residential? And so this is a question which actually, I mean, we have had industrial developments occurring next to residential in Bayside. So there was an example actually in the industrial park, which there was a residence next to the industrial park, and there was a proposed application from Cooks to build a salmon growth facility there. And the requirement for the industrial park is just a 5-meter buffer. So it's actually less than this site. So there's a residence right next to that park, but maybe a different situation where they knew the park was there already when they lived there. I'm not entirely sure of the history. EIA, why was an EIA done? This was not, I'm not an expert in EIA, so when it was reviewed by the Department of Environment, local government, the EIA expert reviewed it, and it doesn't, from my understanding, it doesn't require EIA if the lobsters are not being fed, because if the lobster's not being fed, the waste that can be produced is it's marginal. I don't know the chemical biology behind it all, but if you're not feeding the lobsters when they're in these holding facilities, then they're not dealing with significant amount of filtration requirements. The filtration requirements they recommended was simply to make sure that rubber bands or lobster parts don't get washed into the river and cause pollution. So that would be considered in the terms and conditions that everybody saw. So there's a question about the Shamcook watershed and why not subdivide this property prior to the rezoning? And one thing which I think people often say I guess it gets conflated, PID, parcel, and your zone. But sometimes zones cross property lines, and you could have a property which is half zoned one thing, half zoned another. So the zoning map is one type of map. Your parcel line map is another type of map. They sometimes match up, they sometimes don't. And planners they permit based on the zone as per the zoning map. So where this is actually outside of the Shamcook watershed, but the PID, which is very large and goes down to the lake, that part of the PID would be in the watershed, but given that the zone portion is outside, it didn't have the same restrictions. And again, that was reviewed by the Department of Environment. Oh, question was raised, why would we approve subdivisions when you have this proposal here next door? And the thing with subdivisions and the approval for these is they're in the rural plan by right. You can just, if you have enough land, you have proper access, you can do the subdivision. And if the land uses you're proposing the subdivision, say residential, if you can do it, you can do it. There's no limitation for you to do that as long as you meet all the requirements of the rural plan. Sometimes subdivision applications are rejected because you don't meet the basic requirements of those dimensional matters like area, frontage, etc. Question was asked, has the US been contacted? And no, I don't contact the US in these applications. We deal with this on a provincial basis. So meaning the commission, the Regional Service Commission, we do a contact with the Canadian properties, and we do a contact with, we talk with all these departments. But the Minister of Environment, local government might have more leeway in who he or she decides to consult with prior to making decisions. So that would be something out of my purview. But again, there's good comments here. So there's points raised about I think there was a question about the berm and how would that be sufficient to block the view. So it's not to say it would be a completely opaque, completely block all site, but the idea being if you have a berm which allows for starting up higher than you would normally if you're just planting some trees and waiting 25 years for the grow. If you had a 3-meter berm at least, you're starting somewhere and then plant on top of that, then you do allow for that to be screened over time. So there's some practicality issues with having it completely screened from view by September 2021. It will be a process that will take time to actually develop the screening through natural vegetation. So that is certainly a good question though. And I think that is all the questions that I had that were directly asked to me as far as I could tell. That said, there could be still opportunities for you to ask questions in your letters to the minister. So please feel free to keep putting your comments in and asking questions. We facilitate these meetings. We provide the planning analysis. We have to receive the applications and review them and look at how it could work with the plan or not. And but at this point, after this, the decision lies with the Minister of Environment, Local Government. So I will conclude the meeting now. We're at the 8:30 mark on the dot. So I want to thank everybody who participated on Zoom or over phone. And it's not ideal circumstances for a public hearing. Normally this would be in person, but it wasn't possible to do that. And we did look into that. So thank you for everybody who had patience with the technology. And I've been trying to field as many calls as possible as well. There's quite a lot of people who are interested in this. So if I haven't responded to some of your voicemails that were sent today, just give me a couple days to get back to you. All right, everybody, thank you very much. Have a very good night.